Hey guys, today we have our creator talk with Maddie Beeves. Also just wanted to thank Kamaika Audio for hooking us up with this lavalier mic. It's super handy. So as I said, we've got Maddie Beeves here and we want to find out about his journey into filmmaking and his thoughts on the industry and talk a little bit about gear as well. So over to you, Maddie Beef. So how did your journey start there?
It's been an interesting start. It started a long time ago, probably in like 2004. For me, I started off as an editor, and what I would do is I would just make Dragon Ball Z videos, if you're familiar with the anime, and I'd put Linkin Park like underneath the video. So it'd be like music videos, but with Dragon Ball Z characters fighting. So it's been a long time coming for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you started off with doing a bit of Dragon Ball Z and like animation and stuff. So where did the journey start with filmmaking? Like when was that magical moment when you discovered that, creating films and that sort of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So again, it was in 2004 when it started, the idea of it, not really knowing what I was doing. But if you fast forward probably 10 years later, 2014, I would say, I actually found out that there was a such thing as a film school. Like I literally had no idea. I was just making short films and YouTube videos in between those 10 years. But what really sparked it for me was when I found out that I could actually make a career out of this and that there was school. I can get an education within filmmaking. So again, it was just at school. I was trying to transfer out and get my bachelor's in filmmaking, and as soon as I found out I could, I applied, and then it all started there at school.
Sick. So what do you think about, with the likes of YouTube now and your traditional film school? What do you think of the new style of filmmaking with, the internet and YouTube and that sort of thing versus, your traditional paths?
Right. No, I think that's a really good question, and it kind of begs the question of like, is film school necessary, which we can kind of start that conversation or get into in a little bit. But I think the whole YouTube creator video making process is a wonderful thing. I think it's an evolution of what traditional film sets once were and still are, but it makes it very accessible for everyone to be able to do it, and anyone can pick up a camera nowadays, search in like a how-to, light a interview or whatever, and you can find out how to use your camera, how to set up lights, edit, whatever it may be that you're interested in within filmmaking. It's all online. So I think that it's a wonderful and natural progression that was needed, and it's allowed a lot of us to be able to create content for ourselves, for clients, for family, whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is the biggest barrier to entry into filmmaking? What really stops people?
The first thing that comes to my mind is like a lot of people are shunned away and they feel like they can't do anything because they don't have a camera, they don't have the gear. When in reality, that's the last thing that anyone should be worrying about, even myself as a cinematographer. But I think that if people could get over the idea of I need a fancy camera or I need the newest camera, the lens, whatever it may be, I think that once you get over that kind of thought process, you can start to make films and you'll realize the camera is just an extension of whatever the story it is that you're trying to tell. So if you're stuck on cameras, try thinking more about story. You'll be able to find your way into any camera and be able to tell whatever story you want.
Yeah. I saw your entry into that film that you made. Just wanted to outline what the process was into making that film there, because I totally saw the story in that. So do you like start off with a story and then think about filming, or do you like just film it first and then like go with the flow sort of thing?
Right. So for me, I'm lucky enough to have a circle of friends that actually have the stories waiting to be written, waiting to be told, and it was just this perfect marriage and synergy that I was able to meet some friends that have these stories, and me being a cinematographer, I'm just waiting to tell a story. So the stories for me, they just came to me. by chance, luckily. And really the preparation that I take to telling these stories, I'm a huge proponent or a huge advocate of people pre-production, I guess you could say, pre-visualization. So if you can pre-plan your shots out, the entire story, whatever it may be, you're going to have a lot more fun on set, and you're going to find that things run a lot more smoother. So yeah, the stories just came to me, and I'm huge on pre-production for sure.
Maddie, you mentioned cinematographer. For those that don't really know what that means, what is a cinematographer, and what is it all about?
Right, yeah, so there's so many definitions that you could just throw and attach to cinematographer for the filmmakers that know that out there. But for those that don't, when you hear the word cinematographer, you can think of someone, the person, the man, the girl, whoever it may be, operating the camera, setting up the lights, and really just having that communication line with the director to help visualize that story. So that's my job, and that's our job as cinematographers, is that we need to tell the story of the director as visually best as possible. Yeah, so we're just the people who work the cameras and set up the lights.
And in terms of thinking about your filmmaking and your cinematography and that sort of thing, what's been the I guess the milestone so far, and perhaps what's been a bit of a low point for you in your journey so far?
Okay, yeah, so one of the high parts for me has really just been able to tell stories that I'm really in love with and involved with. There's not really one particular project I can point to, but just like being able to tell a story and being able to have people know me for my work, know me for what I do, has been a high for me. Just knowing that my work is good, people are actually interested in the way that I tell stories, and they want to work with me. So that's definitely been the high point. And I guess jumping over to the low point would be when I moved away from Los Angeles, because I used to live in LA for a few years, and that's when work was coming a lot more frequent than what it is now. So it's just been tough trying to evolve as a cinematographer, not living in the industry where I want to be, but still being able to practice the techniques, learn and teach myself. So I'm still kind of working my way back to LA, so things are definitely looking a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of, you mentioned like telling people stories and that sort of thing. Do you have any tips for a filmmaker that's just starting out? What's the one thing that you wish that you knew when you first started?
Tips. I think the biggest thing, and this is something that is said so many times, I look over it a lot, but it's something that I always kind of fight myself to go back to, and that's just worry about the story. Again, don't get caught up in the gear, because when I first started, my first camera was a Sony A7S that I actually bought with my money, and I spent a lot of money on buying that camera, but I should have been focusing more a little bit on the story. If you can find yourself figuring out like, hey, how do I tell this story? How do I light and how do I frame this scene to make it feel happy, to make it feel sad? Those are the type of things that us as creators, we should really be focusing on, because anyone can learn technical things, especially on YouTube, which is wonderful. But the theory behind things, I think, if I were to tell myself that, so many years ago, I think I would be better off where I am today, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many different types of creators out there and emerging filmmakers going onto YouTube and that sort of thing, and they all seem to have their own sort of style in filmmaking. So you'd look at like your whip pans and that sort of thing, you're like, okay, that looks like a Daniel Schaffer sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So do you think that's like a really important aspect of filmmaking, to like have your own style, or is it okay just to like copy other people?
Right. Now, this is a wonderful question. I think I have an interesting perspective on that. I think it's absolutely fine to copy people. I've started a vlog on YouTube probably almost 2.5 years ago, and the only reason and the only way that I got started by making a vlog was by copying Casey Neistat. Like, if you don't know what to do, how are you expected to have a voice as a creator? So I think it's absolutely fine that if you're just starting, or if you're stuck and you can't find that creative juice, look to YouTube, copy the others, because I guarantee you once you start copying whoever it is that you're looking up to, whether it be, Daniel Sheffer, Peter McKinnon, Atola Visuals, whoever it is, you're gonna find your own voice after you figure like, man, I should probably, not do the whip pan as much because I'm starting to feel like I'm Daniel Sheffer. Why can't I come up with my own, kind of technique? So I think within copying comes a lot of creativity in itself. So I don't like how people give that whole like copying people is a bad image. It's really not, especially if you're just starting. Don't be afraid to copy. You're gonna find your own voice definitely after.
What do you think is more important, the story itself or the filming of the story, like the creativity of the shots and everything like that? Like, what's actually more important?
Definitely story for me. And I can say that confidently because if you think about it, if we kind of rewind time, before there was cameras, we all went to plays, right? There were plays that happened. You'd go to a theater and you'd see what was going on right in front of your eyes. And there was no equipment aside from like lighting and blocking that was absolutely needed. So if you could kind of keep that concept, that thought of mind, that frame of mind, the gear is gonna come. Don't worry about it. Just worry about the story and what's more important about this particular shot. Like, should we tell the story in wide shot? Should we just let it play as if we were watching a play, or should we come up in a close up? And once you start to think about those questions, it's all derived from the story. So I think that story absolutely should be your number one priority before you even turn on the camera or think about what camera you're going to use.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many different types of platforms to actually share video now. So you've got YouTube, you've got your Facebook, you've got Instagram, all of these social media platforms and that sort of thing. How do you see the future of filmmakers actually sharing their content? Do you think it's purely going to be based on social media, or do you see like an emergence of people breaking into the Netflix scene? Like, where do you see the future of sharing video and your stories and that sort of thing?
Right, yeah. I think the future is bright, absolutely. There's always going to be a new way to tell your stories, to present your stories in front of an audience. And I think that the traditional mindset of like, oh, I want to be a filmmaker and have my movies show on the big screen and be able to go to a theater and experience that, I think not a lot of people have that same mindset anymore. It's definitely out there, but we have these apps like you're saying. I'm a huge person that doesn't believe in TikTok, but I promise you on my Instagram feed, there's so many TikTok videos that I'm kind of like scratching my head like, should I join, or like, should I try this out? And there's these new innovating and fun ways to tell stories. So I definitely think that there's going to be a big evolution that's going to continue to happen with the way that we present films, and I don't think there's a problem with that. There shouldn't be an issue. Again, it's similar to like the whole YouTube world. As a filmmaker, the idea was, let me get my films in front of a big screen. Now with social media, you don't have to aspire for those things, or you can have a different kind of a output, which is actually nice. The more people viewing your work, the better. So whether it's on the big screen, Netflix, whatever it may be, I think as creators, we all just want people to watch our films, no matter if it's on a phone or a big screen.
Yeah. Hey, if a friend came up to you and said, "Hey, Maddie, I want to start filmmaking. What kind of gear would you recommend?" What's your answer? Because I'm sure you get that a lot.
Yeah. That's a huge question. I get not only like on Instagram and like through text messages, but I'm a teacher as well, and I teach video production. So my answer to my students as well as a stranger would be, what's your budget? I think that's the biggest question. But if we weren't looking at budget, an entry camera like a Canon T6i, just to name one, that's the cameras that I use in class for my students. And I find that if you're not worried about the gear in the beginning, you're going to be able to tell more stories. So if you're out there and you're looking for a camera and you're like, darn, I only have like $300. So whatever camera you can get, just get your hands on it. Start telling stories like today. Don't worry about the gear again. And I wish I could have told myself this, years ago. So beginners out there, if you're like, what camera do I absolutely need? Just get a Canon T6i. You'll be more than happy with that, and you'll be able to tell your stories. So yeah, that's my answer. It's always kind of a big question to everyone who's, filmmakers and whatnot. So whatever you can afford.
And for you personally, how do you stay motivated? Like, what's the driving force to your your passions and that sort of thing?
Right, yeah. So for me, I've got two really huge passions, or motivators, I should say. One is like, I have that dream and I have that drive of, I want to make my films, I want to take them to the big screen. So for me, like, the end goal is to be able to tell stories like universally that people can see on a big screen. So that's a huge motivator to learn the technology, to continue to study and learn the theory and techniques behind story. And then also another huge motivator is just, I always like to document things. Once I started a vlog 2.5 years ago, a weekly vlog at that, I started to realize, like, man, like, I could see growth in myself within these videos. I can see growth within my family. So just documenting things in life has really been a huge motivator. Like, even when I'm not wanting to turn on my camera, I'm always like, darn, if I miss this moment, my little niece here, she's doing something really cool, I just need to record it, and so I just want to have something for a time reference, something that showed that, I existed or my family existed. So that's just my two huge motivators.
Yeah, are you more of like a documentary filmer, or do you like creating some kind of narrative?
Believe it or not, I love narrative. I wouldn't go out of my way to make a documentary after I just said that lovely speech. But I'm absolutely open to documentaries. I've done a lot of documentaries, so I do enjoy it. But if I could choose, definitely narrative. But again, there's nothing wrong with either or, because you're telling stories and you're just presenting a point of view to people that I think could be interested.
Yeah, what's your ultimate dream?
The dream.
Yeah.
It's literally just to be amongst the greats that are cinematographers, like Roger Deakins, as we all have heard possibly. I want to be in that conversation. I feel like my approach to cinematography and filmmaking is the same approach that, if you're familiar with sports, is the same approach that Kobe Bryant had or Michael Jordan had. I want to be up there with the greats. I want to be able to say that, I can step onto a set, work with the director, and be able to present their story in the best possible way.
Is there like a difference between like commercial filmmaking and like narrative, or are they both the same thing?
They're both the same thing. They're all, narrative. They're all scripted for sure. It's just your approach to it. If you're filming a commercial, you're definitely selling something, and you want to make it look appealing. You want to make it look like, people should buy it. So anything you see on a commercial and you're like, man, that food looks really good, like maybe I should go eat there today, or maybe I should go buy those pants. It's all about selling some sort of lifestyle or some sort of food or whatever it may be. And then with scripted things and narrative things, it's all about telling that mood. It's all about telling that kind of tone. So maybe things don't look as pretty. So your approach and your thought process is very different, because not everything is, super bright, super beautiful. So you have to really be creative about it, which is why I really enjoy narrative work, because you don't just make things look beautiful. You try your best to make things look sad or make things look happy or, confused, whatever it may be. So I think there's definitely a huge difference between commercial work and narrative work.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And just switching it up to gear, so what's like, if you could choose one camera and one lens for a lifetime, what would be your choice?
Oof,
and
for a
why?
lifetime. Jeez. I have this really affinity, this love, this longing to own an ARRI camera. So if I was on like the expensive end, it would definitely be like an ARRI Alexa LF. It's a brand new one. But if I were being realistic and it was just something I could carry in my pocket and take anywhere, it would probably be a Sony camera. Probably the Sony A7S, which is the camera that I currently own. It's not the newest, not the oldest, but it has sentiment to me. And it does what I want it to do. I'm able to hit record and record video, or I can take photos with it. And you know, the lens that I would love to choose is definitely a prime lens for sure. I'm a firm believer that if you want to get a close-up of something, you have to move your feet, or if you want a wide shot, you should move your feet. There's experiences, there's feelings and emotions within that movement that you're doing just to get the shot. So I recently used a Voigtlander 21mm 1.8, and I fell in love with that lens. It's nice and wide. It feels like the same kind of perspective as our own eyes. So again, I love to move my feet and get close to people for close-ups, you know, close to objects, whatever it is. It just feels natural. You know, my photos, my videos, I want them to feel as if, you know, we're looking through our own eyes and seeing the world how we see it every day.
Yeah, you mentioned like things feeling natural and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
For someone that's just starting out, would you recommend that they stick to the rules, or they just kind of go with the flow and break the rules? What are your thoughts on like the rule of thirds and you know, all of the definitions of film?
Yeah, I love to break rules. I'm a rule breaker, but I think that it's important that you at least are aware of the rules. It's not a problem to break them. A lot of people, some people I guess you could say, do get upset when rules are broken. But you know, it's a medium that we all we do on our own feelings and emotions. So I think that if you can know the rules, learn the rules, you're better off, you know, breaking them, and you have a reason why you're doing it. So I think you should break the rules. Maybe you should rewrite your own rules. You know, who's to say that, you know, the rule of thirds is the one way to do it? We can always rewrite that.
Like there is people just say that there's a difference between like color science and that sort of thing between like Canon and all the manufacturers, and what do you think that's true? Do you think there is a difference in colors between each brand?
Yeah, I definitely think there is a huge difference between cameras. I actually like Sony cameras, so I lean towards their science colors versus Canon's. So it's just kind of preference. It depends on how you like your skin tones looking. I know Canon feels really warm, feels really a lot more red versus Sony does. And I just kind of like that different look. I feel like I see a lot of Canon footage, which is totally fine, but there's definitely a huge difference between the way that each camera renders color.
And if there is like one type of gear accessory that you would highly recommend for any filmmaker, what would that accessory be?
Aside from the camera, I would definitely say lights. Invest in lights. I think that lighting is something that is not looked over. A lot of people say audio would be the way to go, but me as a cinematographer, I'm a lot more biased towards lighting. You can be very creative with the way you use it. You can help tell your story in, you know, unique, different ways with the way that lighting has, you know, different colors, different tones and hues. So I would say go out there and buy yourself a light and see how your stories, your images, how different they look with the light.
Yeah, it seems like there's a massive shift in technology in terms of like stabilization. So I don't know, up until the last like 5 years, gimbals have come in and they're just like massive now. What are your thoughts on gimbals? Are you all for that sort of thing, or do you prefer like the traditional route of using like tracks and that sort of thing?
Right, yeah. No, I love gimbals. I think that they're very accessible and affordable nowadays, so I think that if you can afford it, you should definitely use it. Gimbals help your footage obviously to look a lot smoother, and with that comes a lot more professional. You know, this is the easiest way to get that look that, you know, filmmakers get on sets. So I think it's a great idea to have gimbals, and it's something that shouldn't be overlooked. Not everyone can afford, you know, a Dana dolly, which is, you know, this super expensive piece of equipment that literally just moves your camera forward or backward, side to side, very smoothly. But if you can get a gimbal that does that for a fraction of the price, I think it's definitely worth getting for sure.
I hear a lot of people saying that like if you're going to be doing work for a client, it's better to turn up with like a cinema camera rather than turning up with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera because you look more professional and you can charge more and that sort of thing. Do you believe in that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. Yeah. No, I think it absolutely exists. I have been on, many projects where I've showed up with my little Sony A7S, and clients are like, "Do you have another camera? Are you sure this is it?" And it's funny because if the techniques and if you know what you're doing, you can blow anyone away with the footage with whatever camera it is. But it is true that if you do have a red camera, and someone else shows up with a Sony camera, people are going to gravitate towards that bigger, more expensive camera, and they may not even know the difference between the two. They just see, this bigger camera. So it does exist, but I don't think that it should, turn you away from going out and finding work. If you have a little Sony camera or a Canon camera, go out there and find work because, it's not just the camera, it's your edit, it's the relationship that you have with the client. And I think that really defines your work versus just the camera.
And what's your number one tip for actually finding clients and doing your first job?
Right, yeah. I would say start on Instagram. That's a wonderful place to start where you can find clients. It's easy to find hashtags. It's easy to find local businesses. Your community has so many places, so many opportunities for you as that, creator to go out there and help promote whatever it is that they're selling, tell whatever story that is that, that company or place wants to tell. So I would just start locally. You're going to find a lot more work than you think is out there. Once the word gets around and people are like, hey, that girl or that guy does photos and video, everyone's going to hear about you and you're going to find yourself with a nice little network of work to have that could be consistent work that comes and goes. So, yeah.
Okay. And just as a final question, for someone that is, working a 9-to-5 job in an industry that they don't want to be in and they want to be a YouTuber or a creator or a filmmaker or something like that, what's the number one piece of advice that you could give someone in that situation?
Yeah. For those that want to go out there and be YouTubers and be content creators, I would just say go out there and do it. I know it seems scary. I know it seems counterintuitive to, to have this 9-to-5 job that may be paying well, but just take that leap of faith. If it's something you're really invested in and it's something you really want to do, don't let the fear of failing stop you from at least trying. A lot of people just get caught up in hey, I'm never going to have 1 million subscribers or 1 million followers, or I can't leave my job because, this is something that provides food for me. But I think that if you have good intentions and good faith in going out and doing something that you're passionate about, somehow, some way, the universe always, gives back to you. So just don't be afraid to go out there and do it. You're going to have so many supporters, just as many haters that you're going to have people pushing you and finding work for you.
100%. Is that something that you've applied to your own life?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I try to live by every single day. I'm scared of a lot of things. I'm scared of failure. I think we're all scared of like identity and like who I am as a person and how does the world view me. But I think if we just focus on the thing that makes us happiest, I think that people in the world will see you in that happy light. So I just try to go out and just, chase down my fears and tell stories. So, yeah.